Good afternoon, dear students. This is your professor once again. We are have now come to the last class in our course. So far, we have studied the different philosophies of education and looked at their various advantages and disadvantages, their pros and cons. We have seen some examples. We have understood the various kinds of philosophies that there are and all that. Today, to wrap up the course, we will be studying their application. So we have selected a problem, a philosophical problem. The problem itself was found out through study and research, and thereafter we apply philosophical research and philosophical methods to solve that problem and find a solution. So that is what we are doing, and this class will be a little longer than the usual. There are more slides to be covered, so I hope you have the patience to be through the whole being for the whole class and get the important ideas. So here it is. Okay, so this class begins with the topical title here called An Application of Educational Philosophy. Okay, so let's see how we begin this. We have a problem. Our philosophical problem is, what should the starting point of education be? This is the problem we are dealing with. And we shall understand the problem philosophically, build an argument, propose a solution, and elucidate it. That is the agenda of our class today. So first of all, let's study what is the education system like today. What are the problems? What does it look like today? So first of all, some of the schools that are there today, starting from kindergarten onwards, or high schools, or even higher education, they are highly academic in nature. Highly academic. So they are head oriented. They look only at feeding the head, and they don't look at the other dimensions of the human person. This is coming a little from idealism. As you may recall, we look at the ideas, and that is how this philosophy, this problem is emanating and manifesting today in our educational system. Second, some schools indoctrinate political doctrine. So some schools are leftist schools, some schools have got religious schools, some schools have got religious dogma. That again is an idealistic thing, because you are trying to get across your idea and want people to follow that idea, and it's only idea based. Some schools are career oriented. In the United States, we have something called hyper-particularization of schools, where schools are designed and geared specifically for the ends of entering a particular company. So, for example, I study my 8th standard, 9th standard, 10th, and 11th, and 12th exclusively to join a company like Microsoft or Google. My entire educational pursuit is directed towards joining a company. It's called hyper-particularization of schools, highly career-oriented. If you look at experimentalism, you will find that it has got links with experimentalism, because it looks at the practical aspects of education. Secondly, then there is highly consumerist schools, which are very materialistic in nature. They start only, they talk only about the starting salary. What will be the starting salary of my child if he joins your school, whether it is higher education or graduation or even a high school? The question uppermost the minds of students and parents is, what will be the average starting salary that I can expect if I come to your school? So that school is highly consumerist. Then there are some schools which are technology oriented. So, there are some schools even in India where even the second standard student is asked to bring a laptop and a tablet into the classroom. Highly technology oriented, and they neglect other aspects of education. And this is very rampant in technologically intensive cultures like America, and also sometimes in countries like India and England and so on and so forth. Then we have got the MI schools, the schools which have got an experimental they are experiment in schooling. That is, they have got this focus on the multiple intelligences. This was proposed by a Harvard psychologist called Howard Gardner, and he talks about the intelligence, which is something like logical intelligence, mathematical intelligence, linguistic intelligence, musical intelligence, and so he departmentalizes intelligences. And some schools take his theory and then they develop only those particular intelligences in that schooling curriculum and program. So this is roughly the overall macro level understanding of our education system today. These are all the influences that are taking center stage in the education system today. Okay, now there are some strong philosophies beneath each of these, and you may have, you will know better than me the trends here. Every policy laden with educational meaning arises from some fundamental philosophical point of view. This was said by a modern philosopher called Michael Peterson, and he says everything that we are talking about here. He talks about idealism, naturalism, Thomistic realism, experimentalism, existentialism, philosophical analysis, and postmodernism. These 7 philosophies are somewhere beneath all educational policies. Okay, there is no education policy which does not have an underlying philosophy. We saw that in the very first class also. There's an underlying philosophy below every policy. Every education policy is supported by some underlying philosophy. So these are the 7 philosophies that are underlying here. Okay. Now all of them are partial in nature. That is our argument. Remember, we're going to build an argument, and we say if welfare of the human being is the telos of education, then the human should be at the center of the educational model. So it says here, if the goodness of the human being is the end of education, telos means end, the final aim of education. If it is the welfare of the human being, then the human being himself should be at the center of the educational model. So that's our argument. So we build an argument. Okay. So definition of education we have adopted. There are so many definitions of education. You may have heard in our second class. We talked about the education model of Plato. We spoke about the education model of John Dewey. We spoke about the education model of Aristotle, of Rousseau, and so on. So we saw about 8 or 9 philosophers who brought about that particular way of looking at education. And here we adopt 2 African philosophers, Adeyemi and Adeyinka. In 2002, they have written a beautiful document. And in that document, they say the development of the individual should be the ideal goal, ultimate goal of all education. The development of the individual should be the ultimate goal of all education. This is a very profound statement by these 2 philosophers. This was said sometime in 2002. Okay, 2 major problems with our current education scenario. First of all, there's overdose of idealism in some schools. We call it the problem with the cognitive focus. Cognitive means head oriented. Okay, so what is that? First of all, it is an incomplete approach because the human person is not the brain alone. The human person is more than the brain or the thinking aspect alone. We have seen this in Descartes also. inability to deal with adversity. If you are only looking at intelligence, if you don't have the faculty of the heart and the emotion under control, then you will not be able to deal with adversity. Adversity means problems, dangers which you have to face in life. If you are only intellectually focused, you will not have the courage to exercise authority or exercise control over a situation. So that is the inability to deal with adversity. Then there is something called bafflement of the novel. If you are only intellectually focused, then you will not be able to take good decisions when you are exposed to unfamiliar situations. Situations which are known to you, you can do well. But there are sometimes novel situations which are unfamiliar to you, and then you suddenly, your head doesn't work and you become baffled. And that is one problem with the cognitive focus. Then there is the loss of sight of the whole person. The whole person, we look at it very carefully. It's a very important idea for us. The whole person is important. And if you're only head oriented, if you're only cognitively focused, you're only looking at the head, not the whole person. Then there is poverty of relationships. The poverty of relationships is, when you are only intellectually thinking, you cannot emote. If you cannot connect with another person's unfortunate situation, and you only give logical and only strictly intellectual answers or attention, then you are not able to connect with the person that is before you. So there is a poverty of relationships. You're only head-oriented. So these are the problems with their cognitive focus. Now let's see the materialistic slant, and that is coming from naturalism. Something like this: brand consciousness in education. Now we saw in naturalism is to do with only the terrestrial world, only worldly matters, nothing to do with God. It's only worldly matters. In such situations, one of the problems we see in education is the brand consciousness in education. What is that brand consciousness? There's a common fallacy among us who want to belong to a particular brand. So, for example, if I want to do my higher studies, I go to the highest ranking university, not because I want to study there, but because I can call it my brand. I want to be known by that brand. For example, Stanford University. If somebody wants to do an MBA program, he dreams about being in Stanford, and he will die to be in Stanford. And the thing is that for him, the name of Stanford is so important that he wants to be known by the name of Stanford in the world. This is the brand consciousness in education. Similarly, in India, we have got the IITs, where people are dying to enter the IITs just to be known as an IITian. And so that is also unfortunate. This is happening because of the materialistic slant or the naturalism in education. Then there is, because of the materialist slant, there is destructive competition in education. Now, education is growth. Education is development. It does not have to pull down another person. But many times what happens is people are very destructive in their approach towards the neighbor, towards the fellow student, and does not want him to get more marks. And then he hides the books. He will go to the library. He will take the books and hide it off somewhere so that his friend does not get this knowledge. And those kind of negative influences are there in education sometimes. That is called destructive competition in education. Then there is something called investment in human capital. Human capital, the human person is considered as a capital by some people. Capital means a form of wealth. And it was in the 1960s that there was an American economist called Theodore Schultz who coined this word human capital. He says that capital of a country develops if the human beings are considered as capital, and you must increase the capital of the human being. Now, to counter that, we have John Stuart Mill, who says the capital is at the service of human beings. Human beings are not the capital. John Stuart Mill before him said that very, very beautifully. See, the wealth or money, everything is there for the service of humanity, not that humanity itself becomes a capital. So that's a negative force of investment in human capital. If you see education as an investment in human capital, it can lead to that kind of a negative force. Intellectual property rights in the classroom. Some of the schools and teachers, they keep their knowledge so much close to them, they don't share it. They believe in taking profit by when they impart knowledge. This is more prevalent in the Western countries, where there is a intellectual property right. The knowledge that I have, I attach a right to it. When I impart with it, I must get my returns. So this is intellectual property rights in the classroom. This is also a very negative force which is happening because of the material slant. And then finally, we have the mind, which is an economic engine. The mind, the modern mind, or the postmodern mind, or the mind which is the way of obtaining today, is only focused on the economic returns from its activity. It is always surely focusing on the wealth aspect of how to make more and more wealth. Nothing else is there in the mind. So this is this, we call it, the mind is seen as an economic engine. So education today is dominated by a cognitive, materialistic outlook, and these are the two major problems we have. Okay, it is dominated by a cognitive. Cognitive means head-oriented, and materialistic. We have seen what is the materialistic. Is the naturalistic. From the naturalistic philosophy, it comes the materialistic approach towards knowledge. So these are the problems we have seen here. Solution we have from anthropology. Okay, what is anthropology? Especially there are two branches of anthropology called philosophical anthropology and cultural anthropology. We are talking more about the philosophical anthropology here. And Jean-Paul Sartre and Adrian Van Kahn have said something very similar with respect to the definition of anthropology. It is the study of the essence of the human being and the human condition. Okay, so we go to anthropology and we look at the idea of the human person. The essence of the human being and the human condition is the study of anthropology. So from there we get our solution. We have seen all the different philosophies. We said some of them are partial. So we come to anthropology to extract a solution for our problem. And what is the solution we are proposing? We are saying contemporary education should be directed at full flowering of the person rather than being limited to a mere cognitive materialistic focus. Okay, so this statement is a statement in speculative philosophy. Remember in Wittgenstein, we spoke about analytical philosophy. We said analysts look at the statements by other philosophers. Here, what we're doing is we're doing speculation. We're not doing analysis yet. We are not doing analysis yet. We are doing speculation. And out of that speculation, we have come to a solution which we are proposing to this problem, for the problem at hand. And that is, contemporary education should be directed at the full flowering of the person rather than being limited to a mere cognitive materialistic focus. Okay, please look at every sentence word carefully. And now we'll go about analyzing and elucidating the matter. Okay, so we are now going to transition from the normal partial view to the ACME view, what is called the anthropologically comprehensive model of education. So first box here is Plato, Descartes, Kant, and Hegel. Here, the idealism is more prevalent. In schools which there is idealism, Rousseau, Freud, Nietzsche, Conti, they're the body of the perception of the body of the person is more important. Hume and Sartre talk about the will of the person is more important. Khandogya Upanishad and St. Paul talk about the spirit of the person is more important. And then we have the contemporary schools. We saw the MI schools, which is an experimental education. Now, all these five aspects here, they are individually taken, they are partial in nature. We have to transition to something which is more comprehensive, and that is what we have here. This is called the ACME, or the anthropo-centered model of education. And what is so comprehensive about it? You know, we have, when we do research, we have to get authentic sources to support our theses, to support our work. And here we have the United Kingdom's Education Act in 1987 or 88. They brought out a beautiful act about education and talked about the comprehensive aspect of the human person, the social dimension, the emotional dimension, the intellectual dimension, the bodily dimension, and all of that. Then Kocher, Brian, Heishman, they are two researchers. They've also said the same thing. They go for the comprehensive person of the human person. And then finally, we have the Gaudium et Spes, which is the document of the Second Vatican Council. It also talks about the human person in a comprehensive way. The Vatican Council in Gaudium et Spes says the human person is body and soul, heart and conscience, mind and will. Body and soul, heart and conscience, mind and will. So these six things come together to make it the human person. So remember, we're going towards an anthropocentered model of education. We have to know what these the human person really is. So let's see what that means. And that brings us to jnana, the real knowledge or wisdom. If you have a complete, a comprehensive understanding of the human person, then you will come to what is called jnana. So this is the anthropocentered model of education. Let us see what it says. First of all, there is the cognitive. What is the cognitive? It is the part of the mind that is ordained to the truth. It assesses, evaluates, rationalizes, calculates, compares, extracts meaning from reality. So the mind is very important. So what is all the mind does this? It assesses. It is ordained to the truth, Thomistic philosophy. It evaluates, it rationalizes, it calculates, it compares, and it extracts meaning from reality. Reality is very disordered and chaotic, and from that chaos, you are able to extract meaning. That is the work of the mind. Then the cognitive. What is the cognitive? It provides appetite for things intellectual. In consonance with the intellect, it takes decisions, motivates action, displays commitment, and exercises authority. So this is the place of commitment. This is the place of decision. This is the place of exercising of authority. I don't know whether we spoke about this, but there are some very well qualified officers in government who know all the data that they have to do, they have to deal with. They will be having all the answers with them, but they will not take a decision because they are afraid of the boss who's above them. Okay? So such people, the cognitive dimension is very weak. So the cognitive dimension helps you to take the decision and exercise authority and to decide for yourself. Then the affective. The affective is commonly known as the emotion or the heart, and we have got the statement here. The symbolic heart is the center of emotions and constellation of relatively stable beliefs. The sensible, responsible center of personality, the core of the person where the mind and the body meet. So here we have the heart. When you talk about the heart, there is the physical heart as well as the symbolic heart. Now, the physical heart is just a pump. It's just a biological organ for us. But the symbolic heart, it has got meaning. It gives you meaning. What is that? It is the symbolic heart, which is the constellation of relatively stable beliefs. Our beliefs are all come together. Whatever we are today, they have a structure together. They stand together in a constellation. Okay, and that constellation, these are stable beliefs. These beliefs don't change, especially after the age of 23, 25. The person has already got the final kind of stability towards his or her ideas in life. His basic outlook in life gets solidified by that time. So this is this heart that we talk about, the symbolic heart, is it's the constellation of relatively stable beliefs. And the responsible, it is the sensible, responsible center of personality, the core of the person where the mind and the body meet. So now, even though the heart is a pump and the symbolic heart, the physical heart, we have the two differences. Whenever there is a problem or disturbance in the symbolic heart, the physical heart will start reacting with it. It resonates with it. Suppose there is a danger, suddenly the heartbeat goes fast, right? So there's a resonance between what is in the physical heart and what is happening in the symbolic heart. There's some kind of a resonance. Then there is the body, the complex web of entities in the organism that promotes harmony within and enacts what it is to be human. So it is the body which is a complex organism, and it helps you to enact what it is to be human. Without the body, we cannot be human. It helps you to act out what it is to be human. And these various processes, the digestive process, the intellectual processes, the emotional processes, all these processes are in harmony, should be in harmony in the body. Then it is a healthy body. And then we have finally the spiritual. The spirit is the capacity for transcendence. It helps relate with divinity and is open to the mystery of the more than. So we cannot neglect the spirit. The spirit is the transcendent capacity for us. It helps us to relate to the more than. We have got so much, but beyond that is transcendence, and it is the spirit that helps us to relate with the more than. So it is the mystery of the more than that we are relating with. So these are the five aspects of this model. The mind, the cognitive, the conative, the decision-making dimension, the embodied, the body, the affective, the emotion of the heart, and finally the spirit or the spiritual. These five bases or entities brought together makes the human being. And this is the starting point of education. That is what we are saying, we are claiming. It's again speculation, speculative philosophy, we are saying this. Now let's come down to the properties of Acme. There is one whole, the human person is one, okay, but there are distinct parts. Distinct parts. We have to take cognizance of that. What does this mean? So it is like, a forest and a tree. You have got a big forest. It's one forest, but there are different trees within the forest. So different aspects. Like that, we have the cognitive, we have the conative, we have the embodied, we have the spiritual, and we have the emotional dimensions of being human. It helps build context. All these five different faculties of human person helps build context because they understand things differently. The body is able to interact with the environment in a different way. Then the mind is able to interact in a different way. The emotions interact with the environment in a different way, and so on and so forth. They are fungible energies. Now, this means they are substitutable. Suppose the body is tired sometimes. How can we bring it back to original refreshment? It may be, first of all, you may take some rest, and after some rest, you may feel better and you may feel more energetic. But sometimes that doesn't help. You need to come to the mind and to talk to the mind. You need to put the mind in the right place, the heart in the right place. And therefore, these energies are fungible. What is spiritual energy can go and make the body all right. The intellectual energy can go and make the emotion all right, and so on and so forth. So there is fungible energies or substitutable energies within these five dimensions. Then which is the first among equals? I would say it is the spiritual, because first of all, it is subservient to Almighty God, and you get direction from the above, and then all the other dimensions should be subservient to the spirit to get direction from above. That is the way I look at it, but people do not agree fully with me. For some people, the spiritual dimension does not operate properly, and therefore they will not agree with us. Anyway, okay, now let's do the analysis or the elucidation of Acme. First of all, the body. Remember, we were doing philosophy. We said in Wittgenstein that philosophy has got to do with analysis and elucidation and elaboration, and that is what we're doing now. Before this, we looked at the statement you brought about. That was speculation. So that was speculation, and this is an analysis. Let's see how it proceeds. So Descartes in 1641 said, human person is conceptually dual, okay, but experientially singular. What is conceptually dual? He says mind and body. It's duality, duality. Okay, so human person is conceptually dual, but he's experientially single. You cannot remove the mind and body in experience. Yeah? It is together, they are standing together as one. Merleau-Ponty in 1945, he's a French philosopher, he said, I perceive with my body, okay? I perceive with my body. That is, I understand the world, I interact with the world with my body. Body in religion. We know the story of creation where there is Adam and Eve, man and woman were created and each has got a separate entity. But in Hinduism, we know something called Ardhanarishvara. The philosophy is in the same person, there is the male and the female within the person. It is called Ardhanarishvara philosophy in Indian spirituality. So body in religion. The resurrected body, the Sthula Sharira and the Sukshma Sharira. The Sthula Sharira is the gross body, and the Sukshma Sharira is the resurrected or the subtle body that is to do with resurrected body. The body in society, it's private and public. We cannot use our body as we want in public. The way we handle our body in private and public is very different. We cannot have the liberty of even touching certain parts of our body in public. So there is a public dimension and a private dimension to the body. Body in Chinese thinking. In the Chinese thinking, there is no term for the mind in the Chinese language. Instead of that, they have got something like the angry liver, the anxious heart, and the melancholic spleen. These are the things, again, all philosophers who have brought out all these ideas, or different philosophers. The psychosomatic nature of the person is a complex, interformed harmony. There is the psychosomatic. Psycho is mind and soma is body. The psychosomatic aspect of the body it's got a complex, interformed harmony. That's what we spoke about when we said that the harmony within the different organs within the body and the different dimensions of the body, there should be a psychosomatic harmony between them, interform harmony. Then there is something called endorphins. The human body is connected to the mind through what is called endorphins. For example, when you go for a exercise period of say 20 minutes of run, you can feel after the run a very pleasant feeling. That's because the body releases certain hormones within the body in the brain called endorphins. So you see how the body is connected to the mind, and there is a good feeling of relaxation after say half an hour of jogging or exercising or cycling or swimming or something like that. So these are the different aspects and different aspects of the body, and that is the elucidation of Acme, the elucidation of the body we have seen. Body in education. Rousseau in 1765 says, our first teachers in natural philosophy are our feet, hands, and eyes. Not only is it quite a mistake that true reason is developed apart from the body, but it is a good bodily constitution which makes the workings of the mind easy and correct. So Rousseau, the man who talks about nature, gives a lot of importance to the body, and his statement here says that it is the good bodily constitution. A healthy body can carry a healthy mind. It's also there in our Roman philosophy. I think the old Roman philosophers talk about the same thing, but it's very specifically said here. It is a good bodily constitution which makes the workings of the mind easy and correct. You must have a good bodily constitution. Nietzsche said, there is more reason in your body than in your best wisdom. So you don't think that only the mind is thinking. There's also the bodily aspect, and there is more reason in the body than in the best wisdom. So, for example, when the body is tired, it knows it has to take rest. When it is able to do something, it knows it has to move forward, and things like that. So there is more reason in your body than in your best wisdom, it says. Dewey, in 2009 book, actually he has written in 1916, but his book published in 2009 with reprint, says, eyes and ears are not inlets. Reading is an organic process, just like digestion or metabolism. So the eyes and ears, the ears and the eyes, they are not inlet channels. They are very tightly integrated with the rest of the body. They are the reading aspect. When you see something, when you see a text to read, that reading is a very organic process, something like digestion or metabolism that is happening. It is a very complex process. So the body is very important even for Dewey. Okay, now we come to the emotion elucidation of Acme. Let's see what the emotions hold for us. So there are various theories of emotion. First of all, the evolution theory. The evolution theory talks about the fact that animals have got emotions just like us. So it is quite probable that we have got these emotions from our ancestors. If you look at Darwinism, it talks about this kind of progression, the common emotions between us and the animal world, and emotions are common. Therefore, that's the source of our emotions. Second, social theory says the emotion does not happen just like that, but when you are in society and some stimulus takes place in your mind because of a social dimension of the person, then that leads to emotions. That is how emotions are caused. That is the social theory. Then there's another theory called the cognitive theory. It says, no, 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 it is not social, but it is the mental. If the mind is weak, if the mind is tired, or the mind is happy, it releases certain emotions in the body. That's another theory. Then there is non-cognitive theory. The non-cognitive theory says that the body reacts to the environment in a split second without any time lapse to go to the mind. It directly interacts with the environment, and within a split second, it gives a reaction to the system. So, for example, suddenly because of a stimulus, you can see the heartbeat going fast, or your muscles contracting, or you start sweating. These are all the non-cognitive theory of emotion. Then the somatic feedback theory says something similar to this, but the somatic feedback, soma is body, and somatic feedback is the body and the mind together give a feedback to the person, and he is able to display his emotions. And then there is very interesting theory by Jean-Paul Sartre. He says the theory of beliefs which are like an incantation. It's a very complex theory, but you can understand it slowly. Sartre says that you cannot be emotional just like that. Emotions have just to be gone through, but you can incantate, or you can bring to life a particular aspect. For example, suppose I have a lover, and I tell my lover, or my lover tells me that she loves me, and then that's a big news for me. And because of that news, I start dancing, I start imagining, and then I bring all the emotions of that news, and then I without mind knowing itself, become very emotional. So it is something, it's got a starting point, but then it goes beyond my control. And that is called Sartre's theory. In Sartre's theory, this happens when there is also a deep disturbance of beliefs. Whenever there are beliefs which are disturbed, it can lead to emotions. So, and emotions cannot be just like that gone through. You, for example, a person who deeply cries with great emotion, this is beyond his capacity. That's when real emotions are displayed, he says, Sartre's theory. Developing emotionally, Shakespeare has said to us, he must achieve congruence. So he says, to thine own self be true. Okay, when you have a problem, when you want to make a statement in society or also outside, Shakespeare says, to thine own self be true. You don't have to please anybody, you don't have to please other people. That's how you grow emotionally. You grow emotionally when you're able to talk about your real values, something close to Jean-Paul Sartre in existentialism. To thine own self be true, Shakespeare. Emotion education, a problem must be felt before it can be stated. So problems in life are not only intellectual, they can be felt. You feel a problem, and when you feel a problem, you are more surely involved with that problem. A problem must be felt before it can be stated. Even before you can state a problem, you must feel it, says Dewey. There is a deeper order of conviction when something is known in the heart emotionally rather than knowing it in the head rationally. So just knowing it in the head is not enough. You must know it in your heart. The emotion of a problem, of something, it leads to very strong conviction, very strong viewpoint. Research, which is research for truth, is a highly rational activity, and yet emotions play a big role. We are drawn into our work through our wounds. This is Romanishin. It says the wound becomes part of a larger story. So when you're doing research, if anybody wants to do research among you, it's a good idea to look at the wounds that you have gone through, and that wound will tell you a good story. And that story becomes an original story, and then it becomes a fruitful research work. So it is not just a rational activity, but it is a very emotional activity. Research is when you go after the truth. Elucidation of Acme again. Now we have come to the intellect and the will. The mind in Thomistic philosophy is the intellect and the will. What does it say? There are different views of the mind: the brain, spinal cord, biochemical device, and Critias says the blood around the heart. Okay, so the brain is not the mind. The brain is an organ, but then the mind is mysterious. If you look at it only as a brain and spinal cord and biochemical device, then you look at only at what is the organ there. You don't look at the mind. It's a mysterious aspect. So here, and Critias says that Critias is a character in the Greek world. He says the mind is actually the blood around the heart. The blood around the heart is the mind. That's how we understand the mind. Mind is nourished by the truth. We heard Mortimer Adler in our, I think it was one of the Thomistic realism. We saw about the statement, the mind naturally supports knowledge as the earth naturally supports vegetation. This is given by Mortimer Adler, a great Thomistic philosopher. Appropriation of knowledge by the intellect. So there is perception and there is conception. What is perception? Perception is taking information from the world through our sense organs. Okay, and conception is creating knowledge within your mind independently within itself. That is conception. So there's perception and conception. Similarly, there is particular and universal, concrete and abstract. Okay, Rousseau and Locke, knowledge is obtained perceptually. Rousseau. John Locke is a philosopher who, remember, we spoke about tabula rasa. Tabula rasa says the mind is empty and everything that enters the mind is through the senses. So Rousseau also gives a lot of importance to the body. So Rousseau and Locke together would say knowledge is obtained perceptually. Whereas Descartes and Aquinas would say knowledge is obtained both conceptually as well as perceptually. This is what we've seen in Thomistic philosophy. And Descartes also gives an understanding. He says the thinking thing and the extended thing. The mind is the thinking thing and the body is the extended thing. So he gives a dualism, he gives a dual perspective, but both of them are important. Okay, now let's look at the intellection process. This is given by my guru, Father Joseph Francis. In his book, he has studied scholastic philosophy and he has put together these ideas. I just graphically stated it here. So here, the stimulus impinging on the sense organs. Okay, so look at that star over there. That is the star that impinges. It's the stimulus. Okay, stimulus means an external force. So there's a star over there that impinges a stimulus onto our sense organs, our eyes, and also our body. Then this stimulus is taken by the sense faculties, coordinated by common sense. So first of all, the stimulus is understood by our sense faculties, and then sense phantasm is created. So there is some sort of a rough image of this object within our sense organs. And then automatic stimulus response is produced. We make a response to the problem, to the object. Sensation is experienced. Okay, so for example, if there's too much of smoke, then we cannot see clearly. Then it affects our eyes, and eyes start watering. So that is the sensation experience. The active intellect extracts intelligible elements from the sensible phantasm, leaving out contingent or accidental elements. So there is the active intelligence, and the active intellect and the passive intellect. So the active intellect, it takes away, extracts from the sensible phantasm the essential elements, okay, and leaves out what is contingent or accidental. It does not take what is unnecessary and leaves that behind, it takes only the important aspects into perception. Active intellect impresses intelligible elements on the passive intellect, which compares intelligible impressions with memory. After such comparisons, an internal word is produced. So this active intelligence, which extracts meaning, then goes to the passive intellect, and this passive intellect is able to compare with different situations, and an internal word is produced. Okay, this internal word is referred back to the object. Okay, back to the, you see the center red color line going backwards. The internal word is referred to the object. At this stage, the intellect gives its assent and makes a statement of judgment. The judgment is based on evidence from the object. An attitude to the object is adopted. The internal word becomes an external word, and a concept is born. So the active intellect and the passive intellect, they do wonderful things, and then it is referred back to the original object just to verify. Okay, this is the process of intellection, and then the concept is born. The concept is stored in memory. Okay, knowledge has come into the subject. Intellection is complete. This is from Thomistic philosophy, and it was a very beautiful way of understanding how the mind works, the intellection process, how the intellectual mind works, and how it comes to a understanding of reality. Okay, emotion or illustration of Acme. Now we shall look at the will. What does it say? Is the will real? Arguments, the human will. Some people say the will doesn't exist. Arguments against Spinoza, Leibniz, Nietzsche, and Arendt. Spinoza and Leibniz talk about the predestination, the predestination of the human being. So there is no will at all in the human being. Nietzsche talks about that it is this will is just a false idea. It is just there to fool the people. And Arendt says that the will, Hannah Arendt says that the will is something that hinders itself. The will hinders itself. And when the will does not hinder itself, it is not existent. And that is what Hannah Arendt says. And she quotes Jesus Christ. She says, "Not my will, but thou be done." So she says, there is no will in Jesus Christ then. So she says, the will that does not hinder itself is no will at all. So this is the arguments against the will, and then the arguments for the will. Socrates, we will know that Socrates says that I desire only the good. The human person desires only the good. But in reality, we see that some people desire what is not so good. For example, suppose I'm asking to eat more of food, which is not good for my body, and I do it. We all do it. And when we do that, we are actually we are thinking, we are eating excess in the sense that we don't understand it as the good. We don't understand it as bad. We think it is good for us. So in a sort of ignorance we act. So Socrates says, actually the human mind desires only the good, and therefore the will is there. Sartre would say the same thing. You have to make decisions. You have to be responsible for the consequences. So the will is definitely there. Hitler in Nazi Germany would say, I will unify Germany with my sheer willpower. My sheer willpower will help me to unify Germany. That was what he was saying. And Islam, the religion Islam itself, the word Islam itself means surrender to the will of God. So Islam also recognizes the will, and Jesus Christ, in Christianity, he is very clear, very interpreted this way. Jesus exercised his will, but in subservience to the Father. He would always take decisions in prayer, but he would act. He would act, and he would also fight, and he would stand for the truth. So he had the will. He's exercising the will. So this is the arguments for and arguments against the will for us. What is the will? The rational appetency or the power to strive for an intellectually perceived good and to shun an intellectually perceived evil. So it is the appetite for something that is good. The intellect perceives it as something good, and the appetite that gets that appetite is the aspect of the will. So the appetite of the rational appetency or the power to strive for an intellectually perceived good and to shun an intellectually perceived evil. How to develop the will? Okay, John Dewey talks about interest, ends, pursuits, and tough love. The interest, everybody has got interest, and ends and pursuits. In education, we've got an interest and a final goal. When that is there, you can develop the will to do that. Ginsberg, Dr. Kenneth Ginsberg in 2015 talks about parents as being beacons of light on a stable shoreline from which children can safely navigate the world. We must make certain that they don't crash against the rocks, but trust they have the capacity to learn to ride the waves on their own. So this is a way of allowing students, children, to exercise their wills. It's very important for us to understand that the incipient will, the small will of the child, is nevertheless a will, and you must make it expand, and it should be done in a judicious way. That's why he says that parents should be beacons of light on a stable shoreline from which children can safely navigate the world. Parents should help to develop the will. And we must make certain that they don't crash against the rocks. With that freedom, they don't go crashing against the rocks, but trust they have the capacity to ride the waves on their own. That's what it is. Pope Francis in Amartas Laetitate, that document says You must give autonomy and vigilance. You must give autonomy as well as be vigilant when you give children the freedom to exercise their wills. So you must be close by watching them, but you must give them freedom. The will in education. Will prepares for freedom. Ancient Sparta. Okay, what is this in Sparta? Sparta is a place in old ancient Greece, and it talks about a double-edged discipline is a double-edged sword, subservience versus recklessness. Now, Sparta was a military culture. In that military culture, there was very strict discipline. Okay, so the Spartans would be very, very disciplined when under watch. But the strange thing was that when they were not under watch, when the supervisor goes away and leaves them all by themselves, they become very irreverent, and they become very indisciplined. And therefore, this discipline, which was all the time, they were under that Pakka system. They come out of when there's nobody to watch them, they become very difficult ruffians and wild people. So discipline should be handled very carefully. It's not a military system. You have a military system, they will work only if the military system always works. If you leave them in civil life, they will go berserk, and this is what was seen in ancient Sparta. So they do not know how to handle freedom unless they are given the ability to make choices amongst themselves. They will not know how to handle freedom. The Socratic capacity, we saw this in, I think it was George Kneller. We spoke about this in George Kneller, that was an experimentalist classroom. We must have the Socratic capacity to think and reason about our beliefs. Not ad hominem, but intellectual hospitality. When we discuss things, we never do things to destroy the personality of our opponent. No, we don't do that. We only bring the idea, and the idea is in conflict, but not the personality. So there should be a lot of intellectual hospitality to let the opponent speak, and that is a typical aspect of the Socratic capacity. Okay, now what is, we are supposed to see so much about the will. What is the authentic will? There are three dimensions here: the willfulness, the willlessness, and the willingness. Okay, the willfulness, the willlessness, and the willingness. Let us look at this image here. On top, we have the willfulness. A person who is a bull in a china shop. You know, a person who is very insistent. This is my way. I do no other way. It's my way, or you get lost. That kind of attitude some people have got. They are very, very willful people. Some people are very willless. They don't have a will at all. Whatever you say, sir, it's okay. It's okay. I will do as you say. Almost like a doormat. Anybody can stamp over them. Anybody can go over them. It is a very sorry and a very undeveloped way of living. And then there is willingness, where you are willing to work with others. So in terms of the authentic will, these are the three vertices in the triangle, the three endpoints of the triangle, and somewhere in between, pulling together all these things is the authentic will. The authentic will should have some willfulness, some willlessness, and some willingness. And that is where the authentic will gets developed, and that is very important for students' education. Such a will is totally open to reality. It faces it, affirms it without prejudgment or a lack of engagement, but collects all spontaneous moods, feelings, and inclinations of the life situation and responds in a totally free manner. So this is the authentic will. You know, it responds in a totally free manner. Only a free person will have a healthy will. It is very important for the person to have that freedom and to exercise his will in freedom. Okay, now we come to the acme of elucidation acme of the spirit. What is this faith and religion and all these things? Let us look at it from the point of view of some of the philosophers who say fear and God consciousness. You know, the Old Testament talks about the fear of the Lord. Very, very common theme in fear of the Lord. and God consciousness. This has been taken by Bertrand Russell, who says religion is based primarily and mainly on fear. Okay, religion is based primarily and mainly on fear, and the Latin definition is mysterium tremendum et fascinans. Latin definition of religion is it's the mystery of the tremendous and the beautiful. Tremendum, the tremendous and the beautiful. It is beyond our understanding, beyond our capacity to fully grasp. Mysterious mysterium tremendum et fascinans. What is the spiritual faculty? The spiritual faculty consists of two basic faculties. One is the conscience and the other is the soul. The conscience is like a moral trigger. It's a moral trigger that sensitizes you to the difficulties of a wrong deed or a gratification of a good deed. The conscience speaks to you. A person with a healthy conscience will hear his voice, the voice within the conscience speaking. That's where the core of God, the core of the person, God speaks to us in the core of our consciences. And what is the soul? The soul is the entity that is going to receive its reward for the life we have lived now. If we have lived an unjust life, it will receive a reward accordingly, and it cannot escape. It cannot escape the final rewards which God is going to give to us. The soul is the one that is going to experience that reward, and what is happening today has got a bearing on what is going to happen at the end of our life. So this is the soul is the one. Soul is the faculty that is the real underlying person within the person. Some contemporary spiritualities, Oriental, Islamic, Christian spiritualities, all religions have got their spiritualities. In Christianity, there are so many spiritualities. We've got the Jesuit spirituality, we've got the Franciscan spirituality, we've got the Benedictine philosophy, spirituality, and so on and so forth. And similarly, Islamic philosophy is also has got its own philosophy, spirituality, and Oriental philosophy has also got its own philosophy. In Hinduism, we've got a number of things people speak about the God experience and so on and so forth. Impediments to spirituality, exaltation of the self. We are constantly exalting ourselves. We want to become God. We want to become God. I will be God. Just like we saw in existentialism, that boy said, with his hand pressing on the table, he said, "I will be God." He wants to be God. Everybody has got this problem. This is the impediment to spirituality, or the blockages to spirituality. But then God says, "You have a hidden treasure. I am a jealous God. Remove that treasure." Okay, don't have any hidden treasures. Your treasure should be in God alone. And this is the aspect of God's total sovereignty upon you, and He has created you. He's your creator, and He has got a jealous love for you. So He's a jealous God. These things are the aspects of the spirit, and that way we have got all the dimensions covered. Now the spirit in education, it pierces the functional envelope. It remains open to the more than. It derives extraordinary insight. It is always ready for the next adventure. Okay, the spirit, it pierces the functional envelope. That is, the world is there, but through this envelope, it goes connects to the divine. It remains open to the more than. More than what it is, we do not know, but we remain open, and derives extraordinary insight. We get insight, fantastic insight from God. He teaches us what we do not know, beyond our capacity to know. He teaches us, always ready for the next adventure. Then with the person with this readiness for the next adventure, what can I do for God today? What can I do for the people today? I go with that open feeling towards to the day. That is always ready for the next adventure. Okay, so that's all we have. We have the anthropocentered model of education, which is the solution we are proposing. And here, once again, for your benefit, I will say it once again. The cognitive, that is the part of the mind that is ordained to the truth, assesses, evaluates, rationalizes, calculates, compares, extracts meaning from reality. The conative, it provides appetite for things intellectual, in consonance with intellect, takes decisions, motivates action, displays commitment, and exercises authority. The affective, the symbolic heart is the center of emotions and constellation of relatively lasting beliefs. The sensible, responsible center of personality, the core of the person where the mind and the body meet. The embodied, the complex web of entities in the organism that promote harmony within and enacts what it is to be human. And the spiritual, the spirit is the capacity for transcendence, helps relates with divinity and is open to the mystery of the more than. So this is the solution to our problem. Where do we start education? Remember our question in the first slide today was, what is the starting point of education? And I say, or we say here, that the starting point of education is a human being. And what is a human being? These are all the different aspects of the human being. And we have seen the elucidation of these things from a philosophical point of view, quoting different philosophers, different ideas. We've come to the final end of it. So that's all that I have for you, brothers. I think we are finally come down to the end of the course. We saw a number of things during the last 2.5 months. We saw started with basic understanding philosophy, and then we went into the different aspects of education. We saw the pluses and minuses, and today we were able to apply some of these concepts to a real problem obtaining in our country as well as in the world, and gave it some speculative answer to solve that problem. And we arrived at the solution. The question was, what is the educational, what is the starting point of education? And we gave the answer as the human being is the starting point, and then we explained the different aspects of what the human being is, and we elucidated it through analysis and things like that. So that is all I have for you today. I thank you very much for your attention and doing your work well. I'm eagerly looking forward to your work, your answers, and I wish you all the best. And if you have any questions, please do get in contact with me. As I always say, I'd like to be of help to you. I'll do my best to answer your questions. And thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, and God bless you all. Bye.